Hi, hello, it's Pip here from queenpipcards.com. It is Monday the 17th of December. I just can't believe how quickly it's going. Yeah, so it's the 17th of December, it's Monday, it's just after 2 o'clock, and I'm here with my brand new Basics episode 3, and today we are looking at ink and paper. Okay, so we've done stamps and ink a little bit in the first episode, just sort of getting you started. Then we did tools last week, which was cool. And now we're going to do ink and paper, because really the ink and the paper that you use are the foundation of everything that you do when you stamp. So we want to obviously make sure that it's the right stuff that you're using, and you want to use the right tool for the job. So today I'm giving you a presentation, or a little rundown through, I say presentation, it's based on a presentation I did to the European Convention for Stampin' Up! About 3 years ago now, and I've updated it for obviously stuff we've got today, and I wanted to just run you through what I shared then, because it's still very relevant today. It's basically hasn't changed. Okay, so we have 3 different types of white cardstock that we have in the catalogue. Okay, we have the Whisper white cardstock, and that comes in standard or thick. Okay, we're just using standard today. Then we have the shimmery white cardstock, and generally you can't see the shimmer on this when I give it a try, but I'll give it a go. I don't know if I've got enough light over here. If I haven't, let me know. Oops, maybe it's a bit better if I have a bit more light. So this is shimmery, but you can kind of see it a little bit there. And then we have our watercolor cardstock, which comes in smaller size packets, and I've just chopped a piece out like this for today. So these are kind of A5 size pieces of card. Okay, so they're the 3 different types of cardstock. I'm going to get rid of the big chunks of cardstock and then just use the bits I've got here, just to show you. Okay, so these are the 3 different types we have: Whisper white, shimmery and watercolour, and they're all used for different things and different purposes. So the Whisper white cardstock is fantastic for stamping on. It's great for just stamping with colour, just making a great use of all our stamps and ink, and just going straight for it. So you can ink up your image. And did you see I took the ink pad to the block, to the stamp then, because it's just easier when it's a big stamp. Oh, let me come up a bit. I'm too far down. There we go. All right, so that's how it stamps beautifully, just with our ordinary ink, straight onto Whisper white cardstock. Gives you a good clear image every time. There's no faffing around, there's no messing, you just stamp it and it looks great. Okay, and obviously we have lots of different colours, and if you're interested, this one is lovely lipstick. Okay, it's our lovely lipstick. It's gone really dark. All of a sudden it's just gone really dark. So I'm just going to make sure that we have enough light here. Tell me if you can see this okay, please. And if you're watching, please give us a thumbs up. Let me know you're there. Sometimes it can be a little bit, is anybody there? Tumbleweed. So if you're around, let me know. Okay, so that's just ordinary stamping with ink and a stamp, obviously. And let me just scrub that off, because we're going to go a different colour. And that's great if you want to just do large or small images in a nice colour as it is, and you know, just leaving it like that, that's great. But if you wanted to do some watercolouring effect or some different colouring in effect, then you'd need to do some different stuff. And all of our ink pads are water-based ink pads, okay? These ones that look like this, or the old-fashioned ones look like this, okay? So the classic stamping pad, they are all water-based, or sometimes you can hear them called dye-based. It's the same thing. It's a water-based ink that has a dye in it. That's basically what it means. Okay, so that's those. The other types of ink that we have, and people get confused going, but you don't have a black. And no, we don't have a black because we have two blacks, but they're different. So we have the Memento ink Tuxedo Black and the StazOn Black, okay, Jet Black. And these two are specifically designed to work brilliantly with two different types of colouring in, okay, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So Stampin' Up haven't got one of their own. They did toy and try for a while with a permanent archival ink, but they didn't get the results that they wanted, so they won't sell stuff that doesn't give them the results they wanted. So they've gone for these two, best in the marketplace, Tuxedo Black from Memento and StazOn. You go, well, why do I need two blacks? Well, the reason you need two blacks is for two different types of colouring. So this Memento is, as you can see here, a fade resistant dye based ink. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so a fade resistant dye based. So dye means water based. Okay, we know that because that's what our normal colours are, water based. Whereas this StazOn says it's a solvent ink. Okay, and that's important for two reasons. Oh, Lola's on. Hi Lola, nice to see you. Thank you for joining. So it's important for reasons that they're different. Okay, so you have a dye-based, water-based ink and a solvent ink. And that's important because the rule of thumb is that you never use the same outline colour that you want for the inside colour, unless you want a particularly kind of wishy-washy watercolour effect. So I'm going to show you what that means. So when you do a stamp and you stamp up your big flower with your Memento, okay, coming in here, trying not to shake the table too much. This is a water-based ink, okay, so the last thing you want to do is add water to it because it will run, because it's water-based, right? It's not permanent. So if you came in with an aqua painter and your ink pad and you started to put down some ink, you'd start to see it go a bit dark, and that's because, can you see, the ink all by itself, the black, is actually bleeding, okay, and that's because it's a water-based ink, and you don't want that, okay, so that's why you don't use your Memento ink with water-based when you're doing watercolouring, okay. That's when you use StazOn ink, because StazOn ink is a solvent, it's permanent, and therefore if we did the same with, now I need to clean that off, I'm just going to scrub that over here. So if we now take the StazOn and get that on there, okay, nice and firm, there we go. If we now take StazOn on here and do that, you need to press a little bit harder than I did on a bit of a stretch. You need to leave it on a little bit longer as well. And you also need to use a separate cleaner. You need a StazOn cleaner. Okay. So you need a separate cleaner. I'm just going to, because it, see, it stains the stamp otherwise, because it stays on. Okay, so come back in and just take that off like that. And once you've got it to that point, okay, then what I do is I then run it through my scrub once you've got the worst off. Okay, then I can scrub. And it comes clean. Okay, so the StazOn stays on, and I can go over it with my watercolour pen, watercolour aqua painter, and it's not moving anywhere. Can you see? Just not going anywhere because it's a permanent. And so that's really the difference. Now because this is water based, see, if you add water to this, this will work, this will run, because again it's a water-based ink, which can give you some really nice effects if you just want to do kind of a tone on tone. But can you see that the paper here is kind of, it's difficult to see, but it's going all kind of bobbly. It's not actually flat, it's going to wrinkle. That's because this is Whisper White cardstock and it's not great for watercolouring. You can do a little bit and get away with it, but it does bobble the paper, and if you keep going over it, it will pill and stuff will come off, like the actual paper will start to pill. So small amounts of watercolouring, okay, but not great. So we're going to come on to the other cardstock in a minute, because that's what you use that for. So that's okay, but why then would you have, you know, you've got your StazOn, which is permanent, which is great, but why then have a memento? Why not just use StazOn all the time? And this is when we come to our other pens that we have, okay? Because, you know, we have our classic ink, okay? And we also have our blends. Okay, these are not to be mixed up with, oops, oh, sorry, no, that's not good. Go away. Take that over there. Got my wire showing now. Oh, and it's all going really wobbly. Okay, so don't mistake these for these. Okay, so these small pens, these are our Stampin' Right markers. Okay, these are water-based. These contain the same ink that's in your ink pads. Okay, so we have ink pad, pen, refill, not the same colour, but you get the picture. So pen, refill and ink pad, these are all watercolour pencils. These are all water-based, dye-based inks. Okay, but then we have the range which are called Stampin' Blends. Let's just take that lot away because that's noisy. Stampin' Blends are alcohol based or solvent based, because alcohol can be used as a solvent. So the reason why you would have memento is when you start using these pens, because these are the opposite to this ink. Okay, so this is dye based ink, this is alcohol ink. So you use the two together and it doesn't merge. Okay, so you never get any of the black bleeding into the blend. Okay, the ink itself blends beautifully, but the black stays true. See that? So that's why they've used, they've come up with this dye-based ink. Not only is it, you know, really good just to have a black in your repertoire, it's always good to have a black ink for all kinds of things, but mainly you have to have a dye-based ink to allow you to use your Stampin' Blends. Now obviously you're going to say, oh, but it's a blend, so does that mean if it goes on a dye base, can we use it on these? And the answer is yes, you can, because again, these are dye based. So because they're water and dye based inks, the pink doesn't come off or interact in any way with the solvent or the alcohol that's in the alcohol markers. It's genius, really. I'm going to use the bigger one, I think. It's a bigger space. So these work beautifully. So now you can have pink edged green leaves. Okay. So they work fine. So that's perfect for that. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to use your alcohol ink with your alcohol or your solvent based StazOn, because as you can see, it's doing this pretty much the same as it did over here. Not quite to the same degree, but it will if you keep going over it. It's basically taking off the black and it's merging in with Can you see that's going muddy? And you can see it coming on the pen. So you don't ever want to use your alcohol pens, your stamping blends, with your Stays On ink, and you don't want to use your watercolouring with your Tuxedo Memento ink. Does that sound simple? So when I say you just need opposites to attract, so you're going to use your dye-based inks here with your Memento, and then with your Stays On you're going to use your watercolouring. Very, very simple. With me so far? Thumbs up, I hope. Trying to get it easy because people always ask me about inks, and it's not really a simple subject until you see it. When you see it, it all makes kind of sense. So I did this whole presentation, and I have a handout that I have, I think it's somewhere on my website. I'll find it and I'll post the link up here for you as well. But it's basically just what kind of ink goes with which. So, but the way I work it out in my head is opposites always attract. So if you know that this, it says, is an alcohol-based ink. Alcohol is a type of solvent, so you don't want two solvents together, so you wouldn't put that one with that. This one is dye-based, water-based, so alcohol and water don't mix. So there you go. So that's basically how you do it and how you would work it out. So you can see the difference, the differences in terms of these, and I was going to just show you just quickly the differences that you can get. So if we continue in this theme of doing our alcohol with our Memento ink, I'm just trying to show you what results you would get from using lovely lipstick in an alcohol-based version to a water-based version, which we'll do in a moment on the watercolouring paper. So you can see, you know, this is really strong, really vibrant, but you can get some good shading going on. And hey, I've got a heart, thank you. I didn't see who that was. Hey, it's Pat. Hello, Patricia. How are you, Miss Patricia? All the way over from the US of A. You doing good over there? I hope so. I'm not seeing comments. I don't know why. I can see people who joined. Actually, I didn't see you join, but I saw you when you put a heart up, so that's cool. So yeah, so you see how this is, it's a really vibrant, deep, rich, lovely colour. I love my lovely lipstick. Really nice. Always reminds me of Lola. Lola likes her deep red lipsticks too. And this is perfect one in a pen. But I wouldn't recommend you try this as lipstick. Don't ever try and colour your stamps with these pens, by the way, either, because they are permanent. So then you end up with a pink stamp. Okay. Okay, so I think you've got the idea there. I could go on and do that, but I'm not going to. But can you see how rich and vibrant that is in terms of the colours? So now we're going to do some on watercolour paper. Okay. So here's our watercolour paper. I'm going to clean my stamp again. And we're going to go for Stays On. Now, there is an in-betweeny kind of paper, and that's called our shimmery white, which allows you to do some watercolouring but not masses. Doesn't allow you to get it as wet as this would. So I'm going to ink this up, and I'm actually going to stamp it on both, and then you can see the difference. So here we go. Now remember, watercolour paper, watercolour cardstock, is bobbly. Basically the fibres have been left longer in the paper, and that's what allows the water to travel along the fibres down into the different areas of the paper, into the different depths, and that's what gives it the ability to be a watercolour paper. So look how pale that is on there. Okay, just because it has so many little bobbly bits, and you saw how long I left it on there for, which is why it gives you that watercolour-y kind of effect. Now you can go on with Versamark and heat embossing and all that, which we're going to do in a different, do that in a later class, because it's not really a basics class. We'll come to that in the next couple of classes. But this is shimmery white, this paper that I'm doing now, and you'll see that it stays on much darker. Okay, just because there isn't that bubbly. The one thing about stays on is it's very smelly. Oh, it smells of marzipan. I love it. It smells of Christmas. So but anyway, I digress. Don't sniff it too much. That's probably not a good thing to do. Okay, so I'll give that a proper clean in a bit. So here's our two different types of paper. Okay, we've got our shimmery white here, and this is our traditional true watercolour paper. So I'm just going to show you how I watercolour with both, and we will turn this into a card eventually. Okay, so this is my aqua brush. This is the smaller one of the two, and I like this one. But I always keep a piece of kitchen towel with me just to dry off the ends. Okay, I don't want it too wet but not too wet. Okay, to start off with, and we're just going to pick up the ink here, and picking up the ink will activate the brush, and we're going to do the same as we did in the other one with the pens. We're going to start darker, and then we're going to go lighter as we go up. Okay, and you can see as the water dilutes the ink, it gets naturally lighter. Okay, now here there's a hard line. If you just keep wetting the paper, it will eventually start to flow, or you can go back in and just add another layer and see it'll start to layer over. She says it will, I promise you. You just have to get it wet enough to go. And then you just keep going, keep wetting, keep adding ink where you want it. Oh, hi Fiona, nice to see you on here too. Welcome to my brand new basics episode about ink and paper. So I'm just going to get this dark, this wet, and then start coming back in. And you can get this really wet. You know, if I wanted to, I could literally squeeze my aqua painter. If you squeeze your aqua painter like this, you'll get it to, see, just literally blob out water. And you can just get this really wet if you want to. It will start to bow, but it means you can just literally drop the ink onto it and you can get all kinds of different effects. Okay, but if you want to make it similar to the one that I've done with blends, then it's better to have a little bit more control. But it's entirely up to you how you do your watercolour. My suggestion is give it a go and see what you like best, because you'll take more naturally to one type than another. Hey, hi Fiona. Is it grey where you are? It's a bit sunny here, but I guess it's getting dark. I guess that's the problem. So it's what, 3 o'clock? No, 2:30. So it's on its way to getting dark. So yes, so the least water you have, the less water you have, the more control you have, but the more water there is, the better the effect. So it's really up to you as to which one you go for. But you can see that you get that beautiful, just kind of like, it's not wet but grey in Devon. Oh yeah, it's kind of that Christmassy December thing, isn't it, really? Grey. We need some crisp mornings, although it was quite crisp this morning, I have to say. Okay, so see how you're getting that just sort of exploding onto the, and just running and whatever. So that's true watercolouring there. And then I just wipe it off on here. You can lighten it up. Actually, I wasn't sure what I'm going to put in the centre of that. I didn't get myself any yellow. Maybe I should get some yellow. What's this? Let's try. At least it's not raining, says Fiona. Yeah, I know. Oh, I know. We had that the other day. It was horrendous. It just absolutely tipped it down. Okay, so now you have to be careful when you're adding some different colours in. So here I'm adding some Daffodil Delight into the centre here. But you need to be careful because, of course, while it's wet, it will run. And so they will merge if you're not careful. All right, and then that's the same with the leaf. So I'm just going to leave that a little wishy-washy looking. Oop, get my green. And note I didn't have to pick it up from the inside of the lid this time like I would with a Wink of Stella, because obviously it's water, so it doesn't really matter if it gets on the ink because the ink is a watercolour too. So it's not going to make it shiny like the other ones. Okay. So here it is starting to merge a little bit with the pink, so I'm just going to leave that there. So that's our watercolour, and you can see it really is watercoloury, hence the name. It's not defined, you know, in comparison to that one. There's a huge difference, isn't there? Massive. So this is much more bold, more like a printed piece. This is much softer, more like an artistic piece. Okay, and then you're going to need to leave that to dry, because I don't know if you can see, but it is actually wet. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. Oh, thanks, Fiona. You can see that it is actually wet. So that has to dry before you can cut it up or do anything with it. Obviously, the great thing about Stampin' Blends is that they don't have to dry because they are automatically just straight on. They will come through. This is normal. Okay, so don't panic about that. But they're automatically dry. They're just solid. Now, the in-betweeny one, as I call it, technical term, you're going to get used to me with the technical terms. The in-betweeny one is the shimmer, the shimmery white paper. Oh, hi, Alison. Alison's joined as well. Hello, it's nice to see you. Well, not see you, but you know what I mean. So we're talking about ink and paper, the foundation of everything we do. So here on the shimmery one, you can paint it the same as you would really with a piece of watercolor paper, but it hasn't got as much give in it. So it has more give than the Whisper White, but it has less give and less blending abilities than the watercolor paper. See, it's not really running anywhere. It goes where you put it and it kind of stays. So if I wanted to make that darker, I could, but see, it's not really bleeding very much. And then if I wanted to, I'd have to, let's get some more water going in that. I don't want to put lots of water on it. But it's a bit in-betweeny, is what I call it. It will also take a while to dry. In fact, I generally find it takes a little bit longer to dry on shimmery than it does on watercolor paper or cardstock, because really it's got a sheen, it's got a cover over it. It's got that shimmery bit on it, but it works very similar, in a very similar way to the watercolor. Okay, I'm getting lots and lots of thingies. Thank you, everybody. That makes me feel like I'm actually doing something. People are listening. That's great. So yeah, so you can do the shimmery and you can get very similar. But whereas with the watercolor, you could go back in, like I could go back in now, or even when it's dry, and I reckon there's probably still some movement left in that. So I could go back in with some more ink and I could add it on, and I can add more watercolor on, add more water on, and it will go, and it will start to go again. Okay, so that's the difference. The watercolor will keep going because you've got all those long strands of paper, and so you can go back in with watercolor paper and do much more. You can play much more, whereas if I went back in once this had dried, it doesn't have as much play. It has a bit, but not as much, and it ends up pilling more like the Whisper White cardstock. But you know, it's a great middle ground. You know, it's and it's shiny. It's got shimmer in it. So okay, I'm not going to say no to that. So I use both for my watercolouring. It just depends on whether I want to go full old school or not. And there's a great there's been some great tutorials by Sarah Douglas, our CEO, and she's been playing with no-line watercolouring, which I'm happily going to demonstrate in a moment as well. So you can see that. Let's make these a little lighter. Leave some holes. Da, da, da. There we go. It's not quite, it's just not quite so, I don't know, it's hard to describe it, but do you see what I mean? It's kind of halfway between a watercolour and a stamped or a printed image. So there we go. Now, if you want to do no line watercolouring, the best thing to do, and the reason why we want to do no line, actually I'm going to use that again in a minute, I might just do the leaves, but I'll do that. The reason why we want to do no line watercolouring is it looks like it's hand drawn. So that's why you would do, oh, I've got to go and get some more paper, sorry. So that's why you would do your no line watercolouring. It's a technique where you use such a pale base that nobody can tell that you've stamped it. It looks like you've drawn it. Okay, so we like those kind of things. That's kind of cool. So I'm going to take that off, let those dry, because we'll turn them into a card when they're dry, hopefully. I'm going to choose a different stamp because that one's just, well, I'm not bored of it. I like it, but let's try something different. So I'm going to try some more flowers. This rose is out of, oh, I didn't tell you what it was from. Stupid. I'm going to do this rose from Petal Palette, and the other big rose flower was out of Beautiful Day. Okay, so Beautiful Day, and this one's from Petal Palette. They both need the big block because they're big stamps. So they need the, just cleaning off that stays on stuff. So this is the, I think this is an E block, if I'm right. Yes, this is the E block. I think you can get it on a D, but it's a bit tight. I like the E. And again, you're going to ink it up. But this time, remember I said that our classic ink pads are water-based. And you know I said that you're never going to do the same together. I'm just going to break that rule. But I'm going to break it. I'm going to break it because I don't want you to see that I've actually been stamping. Do you see what I mean? I'm breaking the rule so that I can pretend the image hasn't been stamped. It's called sort of technically kind of cheating. So you're going to do a very, that's probably a bit dark, but I wanted it to come out on the paper. So you're going to use a really light colour like Sahara Sand, and then you start going in with the dark colour, and it doesn't matter if it flows over so much, because you're basically just pretending that you did all this drawing yourself in pencil. So it doesn't matter, you're just going to kind of go around. And I don't think you get a particularly great image with it. You know, it's okay. I don't think it's as nicely defined as when you do stamp with it properly. But some people are really good at it. I'm not great at it, I have to say. You just want enough of the line left so that you can kind of see it's supposed to be a rose. Otherwise it's just a big splurge on the paper. You don't really want that. But you want it not defined enough so it looks like you've stamped it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So you follow the lines around, but then you kind of go over them a little bit. And because you just use the ink really to make the definition of what you're doing. Does that make sense? And I always think it looks better after it's dried, actually. But hopefully that looks kind of like a rose. And then you go in with the leaves and do the same with those. And because it's Sahara Sand ink, it doesn't matter. It's so light, it's not gonna show up really. Obviously, I think something like petal pink or a real pale pink, you wouldn't see. It might merge a little bit too much. But for something like this, it doesn't matter quite so much. Does that make sense? So it's a softer watercolouring than if you did the watercolouring with a black outline. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense, because I'm hoping it's making sense to you all. And the hardest bit here is to work out which bits rose and which bits leaves. So sometimes you might have to refer back to your actual stamp image. Okay. So yeah, so that's what people call no-line watercolouring, which it's effective. You know, it gives a real subtle look, very subtle look. But oh look, I've tripped over there. I think it caught it on another thing. But I like the actual watercolour image that's done with a hard defined outline, just because I think I know what it is better that way. Now this, obviously it's still wet. You can see it's still wet. So we can't really do anything with a watercolour card because until it dries, and that can take anything up to 24 hours depending on how wet you got it. But what we would do is we would then mount it. So rather than this piece of Whisper White, we would mount this on here, trim it down a bit and pop it up on there. And then that would be matching with the card. Or we would do that one on there and match it with the card. Do you see? Or you could even put the shimmery white. Again, this one's drier now, so let's go with this shimmery white. Let's do that. So let's try and finish this one off, and we can pop this one on a card. So it dries quicker than the true watercolour paper, and it gives you a little bit like a watercolour effect, but not quite. But you can still have fun with it, with the water, and enjoy it. And so, you know, the only reason why I'm telling you this is you might not ever want to do watercolouring, and that's fine. You don't have to. But you're going to wonder at some point, what is that ink that's in the catalogue called StazOn? Or at least a lot of my customers do. So, and my team. So I thought, well, I might as well just show you. Because this is, as I say, the foundation of what you do. Everything that we do is around stamping and using the use of inks and paper. So to be able to know the difference and to understand why we use different things and the reason that different things exist, I think is important. Alrighty, so I'm whizzing through this one. As you can tell, you can be quite quick with the watercolouring if you want to. Now, shall I put anything in the middle? Should we do the middle? I think so. I think it has to have bits in the middle, don't you think? It needs these bits. There we go. I think yellow's good. All of my roses had yellow centres this year in my garden. We hacked our rose bush. Oh, I've got a bit of a thread there. Hacked my rose bush down this year. We absolutely cut it down to the ground and then and left it with bated breath to see whether it would actually regenerate. And it had the most, I don't know whether it was because of the summer, you know, the hot weather that we had, but it had the most amazing roses on it. So yeah, really, really chuffed with how my roses came out this year. Okay, so now I'm going to cut it, and we know that we need it to be 13.9. I'm going to try and make it, I think I want it a bit more centrally that way, so a bit more towards that side. What's that? A bit more towards the left, and then it needs to be 9.5. If I do 9.5 there, that's going to be quite close, isn't it? So I'm going to take that down to 10. See how I work this out on the fly, really, quite a lot of times with you guys. 9.5 there. Okay, so you can just trim it down. Now shimmery does have a little bit of a vanilla tinge in my head. That's how I kind of think of it. So it's not a true white. So I wouldn't necessarily put some, you know, actual bright white stuff with it. But you could put some of the ribbon around it. The lovely lipstick ribbon goes well, obviously, because it's the same colour. So, or you could just leave it plain and then just put a sentiment. I think I might want to put a sentiment on it, but I think I might want a smaller sentiment to go down here. What should we do? Oh, I've got a thank you. These are nice. This is Petal Palette. Thank you, best wishes. Yeah, let's do a thank you. And for this, I would just wing it and go straight. Obviously, you could position it using the stamp apparatus, but I tend to wing my sentiments quite a lot. Okay. Am I brave? Am I going to go straight for it? Yes, I am. Make sure it's the right way up. Thank goodness Kling is coming in the new year, and it will tell me which way up I am. And we're just going to go down there. There we go. It's better to not think about it. It's a bit like having, you know, pulling a plaster off. Just go for it. You're generally good, in my view. Right, so that's that. I am wondering whether I should put something around it, maybe some twine or something. No, we're going to go as it is. Now it is slightly damp still. I don't know if you can see that sparkle. Can you see that sparkle? It's got a lovely shimmer to it. Just lovely. Anyway, I digress. You can see I've used this bit of cardstock before for teaching people about watercolouring. That's a long time ago. That was with Pansies something or other. Flower Shop, that's what that sort of was with. So I'm using a little bit more glue than I probably would normally. Oh, make sure it's the right way up, look. Because I want to make sure it's going to stick, but also to kind of counteract the bounce that it's going to have because it's watercoloured. So it's going to bobble slightly because it's got water on it, but not as much as the Whisper White. So the Whisper White, you can see here, you can see that that's started to curve the paper here, and that's because of the water on the Whisper White cardstock. Whereas with this shimmery, it does get a slight bobble, but not quite so much, and so that's why. Is that my leading edge? That's my leading edge. So that's why I use shimmery most of all when I do watercolouring, unless I'm going to go full-blown watercolouring. And if you're doing something like brush shows or something like that, again, shimmery or watercolour just looks spectacular with it. There we go. So see, who says that watercolouring takes a long time? How quick was that? Well, actually, I don't know. How long have I been talking? 41 minutes. That's the quickest so far. So, so there we go. Yeah, so I hope you like that, guys. That's my quick guide to ink and cardstock. So just remember, opposites in this case do attract. So you want your blends, alcohol markers with your memento, and just your ink and your watercolouring with your StazOn. That's the way to look at it. Okay, and it's as simple as that. And if you like all of this, great, let me know. If you want to purchase anything, let me know. We can do that too. I will pop it back up on YouTube like I have done with the other ones, so that you can keep an eye on it. And remember, look back without having to search through Facebook, because I know sometimes that is a bit of a pain. I might put a few little diamantes down there when it's dry. I don't know. I'll tell you. I'll show you when it's finished. I'll take a picture of it. Okay, so thanks for watching. Come back again next week. We'll be doing Brand New Basics episode 4. Oh, in actual fact, no, we won't, because next week's Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve. Okay, so next week and the week after, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, I won't be doing a live. I'll come back in the new year and do my next live, but I will continue. I'll just post up some tips for you to think about with the last 3 episodes that we've done. And when we come back in the new year, we'll be looking at stamps and punches, how to cut things out if you don't have a die cutting machine, how to get started with giving your cards some layers and some dimension. Okay, all right, thanks ever so much for watching. See you again soon. Take care now. Bye bye.